My apologies. The reality of the response. You know, in recent years, there's been a really weird mental thing going on where we have this notion of infinite realities. You know, my reality is this, that, or the other thing. Your reality may be totally different, you know. I may look like a human being, but I identify as a cat, or, you know, that's a thing out there. I guess I'm kind of old school. I actually think there's a reality. And my goal is to try and understand it. Because in the reality that I can easily understand, it's important that I be able to react to it properly, right? That's why we don't play on the highway. Because there's reality behind the mass of those, those big moving objects. It's important. So the response, however, we want to look at the reality of Christ's response. And it is beyond words, as it says there. My voice is a little shaky, but I think it'll hold up here. So last night we looked at Lucifer's course of action once he had decided he couldn't trust God, right? And then it was this whole domino, ding, 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 slippery slope, whatever you want to call it, downhill thing, right? The beginning of that issue was selfishness, but it came from a loss of faith. If I believe God is going to take care of me, I don't have to be selfish. Now, I suppose you could turn it around and you can, I don't care which way you want to put it, you can say, well, if I'm selfish, then I can't believe or something, I don't know, but faith is at the very basis of this thing. So catch a couple of statements here that are really interesting. I like simple. Faith is a very simple matter. It's confidence in God. That's all it is. Do I have confidence in God that He's going to do what He says is a pretty good place to start? Do I have confidence in God that He is going to take care of me when He promises He will? He promises to, provide the needs of all His creatures. Do I believe that? Do I have confidence? I want you to see here what happens when I lose confidence. What is it to be in an unsaved condition? Is it not to be living without that full confidence in God, which is born of love, which leads us to take Him at His word? That's what happens when I lose confidence. I'm unsaved. Because confidence is faith. You lose confidence, you've lost faith. Justification's by faith, salvation's by faith, righteousness is by faith. Faith is actually a pretty big theological concept when you go wading into the weeds of theology, okay? But it's very simple. It's just confidence. Do I trust Him? So Lucifer lost faith. So I'm going to say something that you can take it as an illustration at this point. I probably mean it more literally than just as an illustration. You may have to kind of grow into it a little bit. But I want you to think about it here. What do you call a disease that comes from a lack of something? It's a deficiency disease. You get no vitamin C, you end up with scurvy. Get no vitamin B, you end up with quiz time here. Alzheimer's? Maybe. Beriberi. Don't have enough D, you get D. Vitamin D. Rickets. Okay. Yeah, there's a number of these things. There's probably some more I can't think of off the top of my head. Sin is a deficiency disease. Sin is a lack of faith. Now, you can just take that as an illustration, but like I said, I probably mean it more literally than, sin is a deficiency disease. How do you treat scurvy? Give them some vitamin C. How do you treat beriberi? Give them vitamin B. How do you treat rickets? A deficiency disease is treated by supplying the deficiency. Yeah? Maybe there's some technical exception someplace. Some deficiency diseases are irreversible. Too long without vitamin B12, you get pernicious anemia, and from what I understand, the damage is irreversible. But still, give the guy a shot of, what is it? Not cyanocobalamin, something cobalamin, anyhow. And the disease stops. The damage that's occurred is irreversible, but the disease stops. So you treat a deficiency disease by supplying whatever's lacking. Sin is a lack of faith. How is God going to respond? What would you do? You'd want to do something that encouraged faith. Yeah? Am I, is that too big of a logical jump? I think it's sort of obvious. It may be so obvious that it seems too simple, but I probably mean it more literally than you're ready to grasp it yet, okay? Okay, so last night we ended up with this screen. I think we ended up with this screen anyhow. These are the 9 accusations. And the question at hand is, what's God going to do about it? Usually, at the close of the last meeting, I would have asked you, pretend you're God, what would you do about it? And I would have given you the night to think about it, but I forgot to do that last night. So anyhow, we'll have to start from scratch here. What would you do about these accusations? And there's lots of things that we might think of, right? God has 1,000 ways to provide our needs, of which we know nothing. So there's probably a gazillion ways for him to take care of his own problem. There's not. There's not, actually. The only plan that could be devised to save the human race was that which called for the incarnation, humiliation, and crucifixion of the Son of God, the majesty of heaven. That was the only thing. The only plan. There weren't any options. It was pedal to the metal or nothing. And you'll see why in a few minutes. There was no other way by which man could be brought into harmony with his unchangeable law, save by the death of Christ. Now, I want you to notice here. The first statement, the only plan that could be devised to save the human race was da-da-da-da. Probably, just by gut reflex, force of habit, we're thinking of save the human race in a judicial sense. Bam. Case dismissed or found innocent or whatever, okay? Found not guilty, something, whatever, But look at the second one. There was no other way by which man could be brought into harmony with his unchangeable law. That's a healing model. Do you kind of wrap your head around the difference? This is the thing that Lucifer said could never be done. Right? We saw that last night. Should have put the slide in again, but I didn't. Anyhow. This was the only way by which the law could be maintained and pronounced holy, just, and good, by which sin could appear exceeding sinful, and the honor and majesty of divine authority be maintained. This particular statement doesn't even talk about human beings. Because like I said last night, we're just kind of a happy side effect. Okay? We are an essential part in the process because of the way the argument has been framed. Lucifer said, human beings are a bad idea, don't make them. God says, no, actually, they're a very good idea. So that's how we got involved. But the core issue is the government of heaven, the government of the universe. And it's kind of a big deal, actually. I don't know how big the universe is, but then Neither do you. So, neither do the guys running the space telescopes. Nobody knows how big it is out there, right? They keep looking and, oh, look, there's another one out there. It's like, I don't know. It's big. It's a big deal. Who's running the universe? Okay. God had a problem, though, because the situation was not obvious to the rest of the universe. How shall the universe know that Lucifer is not a safe and just leader? To their eyes, he appears right. Let that sink in. To their eyes, he appears right. That's a serious issue, right? They cannot see as God sees beneath the outward covering. They cannot know as God knows. Then to work to unmask him and make plain to the angelic host that his judgment is not God's judgment, that he has made a standard of his own and exposed himself to the righteous indignation of God, would create a state of things which must be avoided. Sometimes trying to solve the problem, you can make the problem worse. God faces that problem too. None of these problems are solved with a magic wand. There is no such thing as spiritual fairy dust. Fairy dust is one of the greatest inventions of all time. I mean, it's great. You just sprinkle a little on and everything's wonderful. It just doesn't exist. That's the only problem. And certainly it does not exist in the bedrock reality of spiritual reality. How is God going to handle this? God desired that a change take place and that the work of Satan be brought out in its genuine aspect. But the exalted angel standing next to Christ was opposed to the Son of God. The underworking was so subtle that it could not be made to appear before the heavenly host as the thing it really was. Now I want you to notice, I think I said this maybe Sunday night. I think I said it. The only weapon in the armory of God is the, what's the word I want? Anyhow, is making the facts available. Making things obvious. Just, I know I used the illustration, all the cards on the table. Okay, can't remember my wording, sorry about that. He could not be made to appear as it really was. Satan could not be presented to the universe at once in his real character. His crooked course must be allowed to continue until he should reveal himself as an accuser, a deceiver, a liar, and a murderer. Here's a key thought. If somebody tells you that I lie, well, maybe you don't know one way or the other. But now that seed of doubt has been planted in your mind. And when I say things like, I don't lie, well, it's real easy to imagine, I don't know, he might be lying about that. Lucifer's ninth argument, God is lying about all the above, made it so that God's words proved nothing. Follow me? You can't talk your way out of it when they accuse you of lying. Nothing you say is going to change that reality. Now, if you study formal logic and you get into all the fallacies, they call that one poisoning the well. If you poison the well of your, say I'm running for mayor and this guy's running for mayor, and I tell all the nice citizens, my opponent here lies a bunch, that's poisoning the well. And now nobody knows whether they can trust him or not. That's a logical fallacy, but it's pretty effective. So you're going to find that politicians do it anyhow, fallacy or not. They'll do it. Anyhow, this is the situation that God was in. Satan had disguised himself in a cloak of falsehood, and for a time, it was impossible. We don't really talk about God and impossible in the same sentence a whole lot, do we? I mean, we grow up with, it's a perfectly good thing to say, but it's not totally, completely, literally true. We say, God can do anything. Well, no, there are some things he can't do. He can't lie, yeah. And right here, he couldn't do this. For a time, it was impossible, right? For a time, it was impossible to tear off the covering so that the hideous deformity of sin in his character could be seen. He must be left to reveal himself in his cruel, artful, wicked works. In the great controversy, all the damage to Satan is self-inflicted. There's an old saying in the political world, when your opponent is destroying himself, let him. It's the oldest piece of wisdom in politics, you know. If your opponent's doing something stupid, stand back and let him. And that's the only way that God could display the character of Satan. He can't just stand up and say, this guy's a terrible guy. Yeah, well, who are you? How do I know you're not lying? God's purpose is to place things upon an eternal basis of security. He wants to solve the problem so it'll never come up again. We call that education. Okay? The universe is going to learn a bunch in this process, and that new knowledge will prevent this from ever happening again. Time must be given for Satan to develop the principles which were the foundation of his government. The heavenly universe must see worked out the principles which Satan declared were superior to God's principles. God's order must be contrasted with Satan's order. The corrupting principles of Satan's rule must be revealed. The principles of righteousness expressed in God's law must be demonstrated as unchangeable, perfect, and eternal. So now, a minute ago, I was talking about things that were impossible for God, and that kind of stretches our usual mindset. We don't often tell God, you got to do this, you're stuck. But notice these words. There was only one way. There was only one way. And notice what he has to do. The principles have to be developed. The universe must see. There must be a contrast. There must be a revelation. There must be a demonstration. The only weapon in the armory of God is the revelation of truth. That's it. There is no other weapon. The unfallen worlds saw that the character of God could be vindicated only through this trial and conflict of the two forces. The attributes of God must be made to appear, the revelation of truth. Of the stability of his government, there must be no question. So how's God going to do that? That sounds simple. Really? How is he going to do that? Well, I already said this, but now we get it with authority. No verbal description could reveal God to the world. Through a life of purity, a life of perfect trust and submission to the will of God, a life of humiliation such as even the highest seraph in heaven would have shrunk from, God himself must be revealed to humanity. No verbal description. You can't say, I'm not a liar. 0 points. Just gets you nowhere. It takes more than words. And it's a big deal for us. Because without the correct knowledge of God, the human family would be divested of all divine strength. What does the word divested mean? What's that? Removed from. Yeah, it would be taken away from them. It's kind of the opposite of investing, where you're putting something in. Divesting is you're taking it out, okay? We would be divested of all divine strength. Does that sound like a good place to be? No. Yeah, probably not. Okay? Without the correct knowledge of God, the human family is cooked. With false attributes kept before the mind as belonging to God, The human family would be the dupes of satanic lies and the subjects of satanic agencies, and he could practice upon their credulity with success. I really like these two sentences because they've got some wonderful vocab words. Okay? For someone with a third grade education, she did all right. So let's go through this. Who knows what a dupe is? You're close. What? He's closer. Okay, so it's a long story, the etymology of the word. I used to be an English teacher. I love this stuff, okay? So what happens is we start off with the Greek god Janus, who had two faces. And he's where we get the name January, because one face looks back at the old year, one face looks forward to the new year. But somebody took that imagery and they said, being two-faced is not a good thing. Because this guy, he says one thing to these guys, he says something else to those guys. Okay? So we went from Janus to two-faced, and we ended up with duplicitous. Okay, now in Latin, dupe means two, right? Okay, same as bi. Yeah, if we, it's just a stroke of good luck that we aren't all riding dupe cycles. Okay, we got bicycles. That's better. Okay, dupe cycle it just sounds dumb. Okay, but it's the same meaning. But duplicitous means two-faced, and duplicity is the habit of lying, and someone who is taken in by a lie is a dupe. Got it? Okay. So it's the victim of a lie. Yeah. The dupe is the victim of the lie. We would be dupes of satanic lies. Does that sound like a good place to be? I don't think so. Okay. Bottom line. What about credulity? How many are you like, is that in your top 25 words? What does credulity mean? Surprise. What's that? Surprise. You're kind of close. You were closer last time. Okay, but you're still in there swinging. That's good. Okay. Never give up. Okay. Credulity. What's that? What is it? One more time. Okay, if I finally found who's talking now, one more time. Are you
referring to dependability?
Dependability. It's related. Okay? Credulity is more closely tied to the word credibility, which is close to dependability. Okay? So if a person has credibility, you give them credence. You trust them. Okay? If you are credulous, you trust every idiot that comes along and tells you stupid things. Okay? We would probably go with gullible as a synonym. Tracking with me? Okay? He could practice upon their gullibility with success. He would tell us stupid stuff about God and we'd say, oh, wow, that must be true. Because we have a wrong picture of God. It's actually a big deal. Okay, let's go on. So we've got a deficiency disease. We're lacking faith. We don't have a good understanding of the character of God. How do you treat that? Duh. The great object that brought Christ to the earth was to reveal the Father. Bing. Go. Whatever. It seems kind of obvious when you string it out right, okay? God is love. This was the great truth that Christ came to the world to reveal. The object of Christ's mission to the earth, to the world, was to reveal the Father. The only weapon in the armory of God is the revelation of truth. And Jesus came to reveal the truth about the Father. In all his ministry, all his self-denial and sacrifice, Christ's object was to reveal God to the world. Why did self-denial and self-sacrifice get into that sentence? What does that have to do with revealing the Father? It's because that's God's character. He denies himself. He sacrifices himself for other people's benefit. That is exactly what Lucifer said, I don't think he's taking care of me. He has exalted himself, right? I will exalt myself above the sides of the north, and then I will be like God. And God said, you're missing the ticket, man. I am not exalting myself. I am sacrificing myself. Lucifer couldn't see it, or if he did, he lied about it. Take your pick. We have a hard time seeing it too. It's not all clear in our minds sometimes. Christ exalted the character of God, attributing to him the praise and giving to him the credit of the whole purpose of his own mission on earth. Stop right there. What is that thing after the word earth? No, the thing. Okay, is it a dash or a hyphen? Neither. Okay, so, I like English. English is fun, right, Okay, so in English we've got three little lines. We've got a little line, it's called a hyphen. What do you use hyphens for? What do we call that when you put two words together? We're hyphenating words. Oh, man, that is so hard, yeah? What do you use a hyphen for? Hyphenation. Okay, that's cool. I'm good with that, okay? Then there's a line that's a little bit longer. That's not this one. We'll come back to him. Then there's this guy. He's the long line. He is called an M dash. Why is he called an M dash? Don't know. Because he is the width of a capital M. Little typographer thing going on here, okay? It's the width of a capital M. And it has a particular purpose. Let's back up and cover the other one just to get it out of the way. The one in between, it's called an N dash. Guess why? Okay, it's the width of a capital N, right? Okay. An N dash is always used as a replacement for the word to. So if I write 10-15, 10 to 15, that's an N dash. Do not put a hyphen there. You're not trying to hyphen two numbers. And just, don't do that. Okay? Put an N dash there. Now, I'm sorry, but that's a little more complicated. You got to get into a little typography and learn some fancy keystrokes and things. But that's an N dash. That's what you want there. If I write January dash June, that's an N dash, January to June. Okay? Only thing you ever use N dashes for. Nice and simple. M dashes are just a little more complex. M dashes are an interrupter. And just to make life more interesting, in the English language, we have three levels of interrupters, okay? So let me give you a sentence. If I said, Tom went to town, nice, simple sentence. Tom's the subject, went is the verb, to town, prepositional phrase. Piece of cake, okay? I'm going to expand on that sentence just a little bit. Tom, comma, John's brother, comma, went to town. Has my sentence changed grammatically? No, sorry. Hasn't changed grammatically. Subject, verb, prepositional phrase. This thing between those two commas, the commas are the interrupters. With me? Okay? The thing between those two commas, I got my commas going the wrong way for you guys. Sorry about that. They go that way. Anyhow, the thing between the two commas is a Alzheimer's. Who mentioned Alzheimer's? There's a word for it. I can't think of what it is, but it means it doesn't change things. That's what it means. Okay, it's just a little extra information that got dropped into the sentence. I now know that Tom is John's brother. but it hasn't changed anything. Commas are the least interruption. It's just like, oh, just slipping in a little thing here. If I want a stronger interruption, and this is just you're playing with the mind of your reader, that's all it is. You're trying to make the right level of impression on the reader's mind. If I want a stronger interruption, I use an em dash. If I want the strongest interruption, I use parentheses. Make sense? Kind of get the drift of it? Okay. So here we've got an interrupter, and it's setting off a phrase. This is what we would call an appositive phrase. Tom, John's brother. John's brother is an appositive phrase. It defines or renames Tom, right? There's no difference between Tom and John's brother. It's the same guy. Okay. I hope you like English. It's kind of fun. So let's go back to our sentence here, right? Christ exalted the character of God, attributing to him the praise and giving to him the credit of the whole purpose of his own mission on earth, em dash, to set men right through the revelation of God. That's an appositive phrase. To set men right through the revelation of God is the meaning of his whole mission on earth. Make sense? Tracking with me? Okay. Now notice, this is not judicial. This is healing. To set men right. They're being fixed. Not like a cat. That's different. Sorry for that, but it just popped into my head. Okay, let's go on. When the object of his mission was attained, em dash, the revelation of God to the world, positive phrase, em dash, the Son of God announced that his work was accomplished and that the character of the Father was made manifest to men. When was that announcement? What did he say? It is finished. Now, technically, it wasn't finished because he hadn't died, but he was real close. And he couldn't make the statement after he died because we just, we don't believe in that kind of state of dead, right? Okay. The revelation of the character of God had to include his willingness to die. Because that's the level of self-denial and self-sacrifice that's involved here. Christ came to this world for no other purpose. Just roll that around in your head for a minute. For no other purpose than to display the glory, same as character, of God, that man might be uplifted by its restoring power. This is healing. Sozo. I think I just blew about 4 slides worth of information, but that's okay. Had God the Father come to our world and dwelt among us, veiling his glory and humbling himself that humanity might look upon him, the history that we have of the life of Christ would not have been changed in unfolding its record of his own condescending grace. In every act of Jesus, in every lesson of his instruction, we are to see and hear and recognize God in sight, in hearing, in effect. It is the voice and movements of the Father. Jesus said the same thing, right? He who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Philip, seriously? You've been with me for 3 years? And you haven't caught that point yet? It's tough being a teacher sometimes. It's like, really? You didn't catch on to that? I kind of thought we covered that for about the last 4 chapters, but Jesus could not express in words to the understanding of man the love of the Father. He could only say, John 3:16, the most famous, most beloved verse in the Bible. He could say that And it wouldn't be enough, because words don't count. They may be true, but they don't count. Now, the good news here is that we aren't to the end of the paragraph. There's one more sentence. But he did express the love of God in his actions. You know the old saying, right? Actions speak. There's truth to that. Actions speak louder than words. God is no fool. And when you're in the market for investments, you're looking for the greatest ROI, right? Anybody know what an ROI is? Return on investment. If I could take my, all $53 of my life savings and invest it at 1% interest, or I could invest it over here at 10% interest, what kind of a fool am I to spend my money over here, right? So, actions worked, words didn't. Not that words are bad, right? They just wouldn't complete the job. So, what a surprise. The Savior of the world spent more time and labor in healing the afflicted of their maladies than in preaching. That's genius. Put your money where you're going to get some return. Put your time where you can get the most bang for your buck. Kind of makes sense to me. The thing that surprises me is how little time we spend looking at the revelation of God's character as the tool for the restoration and uplifting of man. Does that make sense? We are so easily sidetracked into thinking that something else of importance is going to heal hearts and lives. Is the state of the dead an important thing to understand? Yes. It's not going to heal you. It can protect you from damage. That's cool, right? I mean, no need to, stub your toe if you don't have to, right? It can protect you from deception, but it's not going to heal you. And I think I could go through a bunch of other, doctrinal points. It's the revelation, it's look unto me, all you ends of the earth, and be saved. It's look at that snake on the pole and be healed. It's not rocket science. We have to learn. I mean, this is our hope, is looking at the character of Christ, the character of God. With a false attributes kept before us, we would be dupes and we'd be credulous and all sorts of other perfectly normal human stupid things. We don't want to do that. We want to look and live. Okay. Go quickly through this because I already covered this the other night anyhow. But okay, we got 3 verses right here. And I'm not going to read them just to save time, but notice these words: made you well, made well, made you well, made you well. All of those come from the Greek word sozo. Okay? Sozo. S-O-Z-O. I almost said Z. I'm almost becoming, like really a Canadian somehow. They're working on me. Now we have 3 more verses. She will bring forth a son. You shall call his name Jesus. He shall save his people from their sins. Who is this who even forgives sins? Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. And for by grace you have been saved through faith. In each of those cases, the Greek word is sozo. Same word. Healing, salvation, same word. Because there is value, at least, if not some sort of exclusive correctness, in viewing salvation as a matter of healing, rather than as a matter of judicial enactment. It's a real mind shift. I'll tell you. Because, and if it seems a little weird at times, I can sympathize. Because I've been looking at this and looking into this for quite a long time, actually. But, it's still very easy for me to hear somebody talk about forgiveness and immediately think, with the gavel, And that's not a bad illustration. But it's not the whole picture. At the very least, healing is an essential part of the picture. Made you well, saved, all the same Greek word. It's almost like Ellen White knew Greek. Weird. There's no evidence I've ever seen that she was relating to it as a matter of the original language or anything like that. I think maybe she just had sort of a connection with the original author. The Holy Spirit never has, and never will in the future, divorce the medical missionary work from the gospel ministry. They cannot be divorced. Bound up with Jesus Christ, the ministry of the word and the healing of the sick are one. Why would that be? Because we need the practical illustration on a level that we can relate to. We've got to see forgiveness for the violation of natural law. Does that make sense? We'll see this in a little bit. But I've said it before, it's easy for a judge or a cop to just give you a warning ticket, right? That's easy. He could do that all day long. You might get fired, if he doesn't, issue a few tickets and rake in some money. But it's easy to forgive that. It is not easy all day long to forgive cancer. But medical missionary work is involved with healing genuine results of violation of law, right? If you violate the law that says you ought to drink some water and not just like super duper power gulp or something, your blood ends up like molasses because it's got no hydration in there, and your brain works poorly. Well, you change your habits. You get a new vision of how life can be, and you start drinking water, and you know what? Your body can heal. I wouldn't want to give the impression that you can heal yourself of sin. Don't go there. But it is through the revelation of the character of the Father that we are uplifted in this healing process of forgiveness. Okay, let's go on. There was one major issue at the foundation of Jesus' whole mission. Christ's life of sinlessness, lived on this earth in human nature, is a complete refutation of Satan's charge against the character of God. Remember those accusations? Jesus had those in mind when he was here on earth, because he just went walking down the list, knocking them off. Okay. Now there's one little detail there that's going to be interesting to you, and I'll admit, you can work this through in your own mind however you want. It says it's a complete refutation of Satan's charges against the character of God. Now, I'm going to say something in the next couple of slides, if you remember that, and I want you to remember it because I'm not trying to pull off a fast one on anybody, okay? But just remember, complete refutation of the character of God, okay? Because I'm going to suggest that We haven't refuted all 9 of the accusations. Okay. So, here are our accusations again. Let's try to put ourselves in the position of the unfallen universe. I'm running long here. Got to be quick, sorry. Unfallen universe after the crucifixion. Okay? Accusation 1. Angels are holy by nature and really smart. You just crucified the innocent son of a God. That's not holy and that's not smart. That accusation doesn't hold much water, right? God was unfair when he exalted Jesus above Lucifer. Oh, really? You think, Lucifer, you would have done a great job up there? We are sure glad that you aren't. Okay? So I'm going quickly, but I think you can track with me. Those 2 accusations are just like toast. The plan to create human beings was a mistake. Well, Lucifer's got a little better argument going here on this one because things have been a mess for 4,000 years on earth by this time. But Jesus just came as a human being, a real human being. And he did quite well, thank you. Number 4, God is selfish, unforgiving, and revengeful. Oh, really, Lucifer? Seriously, dude, after the cross, you're gonna try and maintain that one? Those 2 are down. God's law is defective and needs to be changed. No, Jesus just did it. Whole lifetime, 33, whatever years. And from the universe's perspective, especially after the resurrection, keeping the law worked out really well for Jesus. It's a very doable, workable thing. And he did it as a human being, which, and a human being after 4,000 years of sin, right? Taking the effects of all that. That argument's not going to carry weight. Number 6, neither angels nor human beings can obey God's law. Yeah, he just did it, right? There's nothing quite like doing what they told you couldn't do. As a classic way to prove, I'm sorry, you are wrong. You said I couldn't, I just did. Okay, so after the ministry of Christ, 2/3 of Lucifer's arguments are toast. Now the statement said a complete refutation. I'm here to tell you that those last 3 are still on the table. How can I say that when it said complete? It said a complete refutation of the character of God. This is, I would love to ask Ellen White some questions and work out some fine details about how she said this or that or the other thing. That would be just a lot of fun. My best argument here, I can tell you why, we'll get to it. I can tell you why those 3 are still on the table. But my best argument is that what she, the distinction she might have had in mind was that the first 6 have to do with his character explicitly as a person, so to speak. And 7, 8, and 9, well, 9's kind of dumb, in a sense. Let's just take care of 9 here. God's been proven right on the first 6. If he's proven right on 7 and 8, 9 just disappears. Does that make sense? So 9 is in a weird class of its own. But 7 and 8, about law and forgiveness. I don't know. I guess I would say that maybe those are governmental issues rather than character issues. That's kind of it's kind of a dumb thing to say. It's kind of a weak argument. I understand that. I think if I could sit Ellen White down and show her, these, and say, how do you understand that? Well, I think she could explain. It's just I can't. Okay? So, do what you want with that. And if you want to reject my idea that those 3 are still on the table because of that previous statement, feel free to do that. But I'm going to show you statements why those 7 and 8 are still on the table, okay? So take that for whatever it's worth. I'm going to skip some slides here. These are good slides, but you know what? We're going to skip them and get back to these last 3 claims here. Okay. I want to do a quick illustration. That's a pretty believable road down here in Oklahoma. I show that to people in British Columbia and they say, yeah, that's just AI. Ain't no roads like that anywhere in the world. We don't have them like that in British Columbia, I'll tell you that much. We got mountains and oceans and trees in the way. But yeah, so you can imagine this. Well, you don't have to imagine this. You can I've been there, yeah. Okay, Up in Canada, my second neck of the woods, they're sitting here. I can imagine this. If I just work hard, I can imagine. Okay, so you're driving down this road. Imagine, you're driving down the road. There's not a lot going on out there, actually. Looks like it's got white lines down the middle. That's nice. Not a lot going on out there in the ditch. Not really a ditch even, actually, but there's nothing much going on there. Now just pretend that you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you come to a road sign. It's not, okay, in my picture it's going to be in the middle of the road, but it would be appropriately off to one side, right? Okay. What are you thinking? Yeah, what is with that? Seriously, I got places to go, I got things to do, 48, I don't think so. Now just pretend, no reflection on anyone's character, but just pretend that somehow you knew there wasn't a police officer for like 50 miles around. What might happen? What's that? Law breaking. Okay, so it's possible. Some of those irresponsible people in society, they might opt to actually go faster than 40 miles an hour. I'm just, we're still imagining. Okay. Let's just pretend for the moment they say, I don't think so. And they put their foot on the gas. I mean, their foot's already on the gas probably, but they saw the sign as they went ripping past it. They're doing 110, and the sign said 40, and they slow down just long enough to, the engine goes, eep, and they're doing 110 again, okay? What happens to them because they're doing 110 in a 40 zone? No cops anywhere. What happens to them? They get home sooner. that's all that happens, right? Nothing happens. The speed limit is an arbitrary law. Arbitrary laws, among other characteristics, are not self-enforcing. It takes a police officer. And, he writes you a ticket, and then it takes the courthouse, right? If you're going to go, you got to go through all the machinery of paying the ticket. If you decide not to pay the ticket, then they have to put out an all-points bulletin, and now you got cops all over the world trying to track you down because you were doing 110 in a 40 zone, right? It takes a lot of machinery to make that law actually do something. Okay, let's switch our imagination just a little bit. You're doing 110 down this same road right here. 110, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of your eye, you see a road sign. Different sign this time. There's our road. Take a good look at it. Here's the sign. No cops around. What happens if you hit the corner at 110? Well, there's really nothing in the way, it looks like. That's a pretty godforsaken piece of real estate right there. You might get some sagebrush on your bumper, I think, but are you going to make the corner? You are not going to make the corner. That, my friends, is not an arbitrary law. It doesn't make a bit of difference whether there's a police officer there or not. That law is self-enforcing. Self-enforcing laws are really hard to forgive. Now, up in my neck of the woods, you hit a corner like that too fast, you are not going to be going through sagebrush. You're going to be going through pine trees. Or matter of fact, you're going to be stopped on the front end of the first pine tree you run into, because they're a little bit tougher than sagebrush. Let's put it that way. And then the cop comes along, and he says, Well, son, looks like you're going a bit too fast as you come into the corner there, and it's kind of a shame that you totaled your car, you flew through the windshield, and you lost about 3/4 of your blood on the ground there, but I'm just going to give you a warning today. It's okay. How's that work in the EMT world? Fairy dust, baby. Just sprinkle some fairy dust and it's all okay. Satan planned to wrest from God the noble Adam and his companion Eve. If he could in any way beguile them to disobedience, God would make some provision whereby they might be pardoned. And then he himself and all the fallen angels would be in a fair way to share with them of God's mercy. Satan could not imagine a non-arbitrary law. To him, God's law was arbitrary. It could be changed, it could be forgiven. God said it couldn't be changed. God said that, yes, it is forgiveness, but it's not the way you think. He said, when God pardons Adam and Eve, he's going to have to change his law. And when he changes his law, he's going to have to pardon me because I was right all along. I told you I was the smartest kid on the block. Satan gambled his eternal existence on God's love for you and me. Just roll that one around in your head. Satan reasoned that if God pardoned sinful man, whom he had created, he would also pardon and receive into favor him and his angels. I love this line. But he was disappointed. Disappointed. That's like the classic understatement of all time. Disappointed, as in catapulted into a permanent condition of homicidal rage. That's disappointment. He didn't get what he wanted out of this deal. This arbitrary thing just keeps coming up. Satan came to Eve as an angel of light. Actually, as a snake, but Ellen White, it's her illustration, not mine, okay? But Satan came to Eve as an angel of light and persuaded her that this particular prohibition was of arbitrary authority. Why would that make any difference? Because there weren't any police officers around. God's never going to miss a couple pieces of fruit, Eve. You might as well try it. He's not even here. He won't even know. It's not a big deal. After Adam and Eve had sinned, they became conscious that their garments of purity and brightness, the covering given them by God, had fallen away from them. They saw that they were naked and ashamed to respond to God's call. They hid themselves among the trees of the garden, deprived of the divine covering of light and innocence. They are afraid to meet their God. They ate the fruit. God wasn't there. They could see, right? Can argue the omnipresence of God, that whole thing. But, in a visible sense, God wasn't there. They ate the fruit. Nobody knows. I don't know how that really works, but garments of light disappear. Oh, what's going on there? Something happened. I thought this was arbitrary. This seems more like a natural effect. Something weird going on. All of a sudden, it says they knew that they were naked. That caused some concern. So, fig leaves. Sure, let's try fig leaves. I'd really like to try sewing some fig leaves together sometime just to see how it would work. I'm not sure I'd model it, but I don't really understand the whole fig leaf thing. It seems like maybe banana leaves or something, but, I'm not going to argue what they count. It says fig leaves. Fig leaves didn't work that well. And when God came to visit, they hid because they were guilty and they were ashamed. Their own sense of guilt made it so they could not believe that God loved them. Adam and Eve had lost their faith in God's love. We've got a deficiency disease. What is it to be in an unsaved condition? Is it not to be living without that full confidence in God, which is born of love, which leads us to take him at his word? Faith is a very simple matter. It is confidence in God. But you can't have confidence in God when you feel guilty. So the first step has to be somehow to relieve the sense of guilt. Animal sacrifices. Animal sacrifice. You confess your sin. You kill a lamb. God will forgive you. Now, we look back and say, well, actually, lambs, no. Lambs are sweet and cuddly, but no, they don't pay for sin. We know that because we're such sophisticated, New Testament Christians. I wouldn't be quite so quick to say something like that, really, other than as an illustration. It gave them confidence in God. That's a part of the forgiveness process. It begins the healing process. Without confidence in God, no healing is going to take place. They had to have that sense of guilt addressed, and God gave them a perfectly workable tool to do it. And that's where we leave it for tonight. Kind of a cliffhanger, but that's okay. Come back tomorrow.